Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever scrolled through social media, maybe late at night, and seen someone offering these, quick solutions for your deepest emotional struggles?
Hmm.
Online health services, especially for mental health, they promise accessibility, convenience, which sounds great.
Because.
But what happens when those offering help aren't playing by the rules? When the lines between legitimate expertise and, frankly, audacious claims get dangerously blurred?
It's a huge concern.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating and honestly quite concerning set of documents we've gotten our hands on.
Yeah, these are quite detailed.
We've got this stack of sources detailing a pretty comprehensive legal and ethical analysis. Our mission here is to pull out the most important bits for you, give you a shortcut to being truly well-informed on what's a pretty complex issue.
Indeed. And what's really interesting, I think, is how these documents shine a light on just how critical regulation and professional ethics are, especially now, in this globalized digital world.
Right.
We're looking at a specific case from Chile. It involves a professional named Barbara Gonzalez and her center, Alma Mía Libre.
Okay.
And the allegations are serious. We're talking illegal practices, potential fraud, and a pretty blatant disregard for patient privacy and safety.
Wow.
It really serves as a powerful example of why understanding the legal stuff, the scaffolding around mental health services, is just crucial for protecting people, wherever they are.
Exactly. Our sources dig right into specific legal codes, ethical guidelines, the actual details of the case. It gives you a compelling look at the potential risks when these critical boundaries get crossed. You'll definitely walk away from this deep dive with a much clearer picture of what to look out for, why these regulations even exist, and maybe a renewed appreciation for these often invisible protections meant to keep us safe.
Hopefully, yes.
So let's set the stage then. Pull back the curtain a bit. Who is Barbara Gonzalez, and what exactly is this Alma Mía Libre accused of? Because it sounds like the allegations are pretty wide-ranging.
They are quite comprehensive. The documents identify Barbara Gonzalez as a professor of differential education. She apparently has a master's in inclusion and has taken various psychology courses.
Okay, so some background in related fields.
Right, but here's the crucial point. She is alleged to not possess a valid psychologist's title in Chile, nor is she registered with the Chilean College of Psychologists.
Ah, okay, that's the key missing piece.
Exactly. And despite this, her center, Alma Mía Libre, purportedly offered services like psychological therapy, clinical diagnoses, and even attention to victims of psychological abuse, things that require that specific license.
And these aren't just minor administrative errors, are they? These are professional activities that legally, ethically are reserved for licensed, qualified psychologists. That difference is huge.
Precisely. The absolute core of the complaint against her and Alma Mía Libre is the illegal practice of psychology. Full stop. Then there's operating a health center without proper authorization and benefiting financially from these unauthorized services. But beyond that, the accusations also cover misleading advertising, serious violations of patient privacy, and even a significant conflict of interest because of her role in the education sector.
Wow, okay. It really paints a picture of a broad disregard for the established rules.
That seems to be the allegation, yes.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting for me because our sources actually correct some initial misunderstandings about which laws apply here. And this helps us see the protections that should be in place. Let's just for a moment dive into the specifics of Chilean law, not to get bogged down in legalese, but just to highlight how specific these protections are and how they kind of reflect universal ideas about professional oversight.
Absolutely. It's important context. The documents clarify that the main legal framework isn't a law about scientific research, lay in a degrees 20.120, which might have been initially thought.
Right.
It's actually lay in degrees 17.033. This law established the College of Psychologists way back in 1968.
Okay, so a foundational law.
Very much so. It clearly defines what counts as professional psychological services. And it strictly requires either a recognized Chilean university title or a foreign one that's been officially revalidated in Chile.
Okay, so just having a degree from somewhere else isn't enough.
Not for practice, no. And furthermore, all professionals have to be officially registered with the National Registry of Individual Health Providers. It's not just about the degree, like you said. It's about official national recognition and ongoing accountability.
So it's not just about getting a diploma, it's this whole system.
Yeah.
Recognition, registration, oversight within the country. That makes sense.
Exactly. Now, when we look at the accusations of illegal practice, the Chilean Penal Code comes into play, specifically Articles 213 and 313A.
Okay, the penal code. So criminal charges, potentially?
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
These articles criminalize pretending to hold a profession that requires a specific title and performing acts that belong to that profession. Yeah. Like offering services publicly or making diagnoses without being authorized.
Right.
And it's considered a mere activity crime.
What does that mean exactly, mere activity?
It means the act itself, practicing without the license, is illegal. It doesn't require proof that a specific patient was harmed. Just doing it is the offense.
That's a really crucial distinction. So the violation isn't just if a client complains later, but the action itself is against the law from the get-go.
Correct.
Okay, so how does the fraud aspect fit into this legal picture?
Well, that falls under Article 468 of the Penal Code. This deals with defrauding others through false representations.
Okay.
So claiming qualifications you don't actually possess to get paid for services. This ties directly to the allegation that Barbara Gonzalez charges for psychological therapy and clinical attention that she cannot legally offer.
Right.
The alleged deception is misrepresenting herself as qualified and legally authorized, which then induces people to pay for care that isn't legitimate.
What about the marketing, promoting these services, especially online where, anyone can set up a website? Is that regulated too?
Oh, definitely. There's Ley N. Degrees 19.496, which is the consumer protection law. And Article 28 specifically prohibits misleading or deceptive advertising about the suitability or characteristics of a service.
Okay.
So this becomes highly relevant if someone presents themselves with titles or qualifications that aren't actually recognized in Chile. It creates a false impression of competence or legality.
And the documents mention she presented herself as an expert in clinical psychology using non-homologated titles. What does non-homologated mean here?
Right. Non-homologated basically means her foreign degrees hadn't gone through the official process in Chile to be recognized or validated. They hadn't been certified as meeting Chilean standards for professional practice within Chile.
Got it. So claiming expertise based on unrecognized credentials is a breach of that consumer law.
Exactly. It's seen as misleading advertising, breaching consumer trust.
Patient privacy. Especially in mental health, that feels absolutely fundamental. Is that covered strongly in Chilean law?
Absolutely fundamental, yes. Ley N. Degree 19.628 specifically governs data protection and privacy in Chile. It requires explicit informed consent for processing any data.
Okay.
But beyond that specific law, psychologists have a very strict ethical and legal duty of confidentiality. They simply cannot publicly disclose clinical cases or any confidential information without explicit patient consent. Even acknowledging someone as a patient is confidential.
And the sources suggest there were alleged violations here, like talking about cases publicly.
Yes, the sources indicate alleged violations through public discussion of client cases, potentially online. Even anonymized discussion can be problematic.
Wow. Okay, this all sounds pretty comprehensive within Chile, but you mentioned the global reach earlier. How does that complicate things when these online services just ignore borders?
Yeah, that's a key point. And honestly, one of the biggest challenges in digital health right now. Chile does have regulations for telemedicine. Ley N. Degrees 21.541 and Ley N. Degrees 21.746. These require accredited platforms.
Accredited platforms, meaning?
Meaning government-approved or certified digital environments. Platforms that ensure data security, privacy, and a certain standard of professionalism, even for virtual consults.
Okay.
But internationally, the expectation, the standard, is that professionals have to comply with licensing rules in both their own country and the patient's country.
Both. Wow.
Yes. So if someone isn't even licensed in their own country, like the allegation here, well, adhering to rules in multiple other countries becomes basically impossible. It creates this kind of regulatory gray area or blind spot, which really magnifies the risk for international clients.
So, if Alma Mía Libre was treating someone in, say, Spain from Chile.
Exactly. Ideally, the practitioner needs to be licensed and recognized in both Chile and Spain. Without that, the client in Spain is getting care with essentially no official oversight, no real accountability, and likely no legal recourse in Spain if something goes wrong.
It sounds like a professional Wild West almost, when services cross borders without those checks.
You can certainly feel that way for the consumer.
And what about her role in education? You mentioned she runs a school. How does that fit in?
Right. The documents highlight her role as director and sustainer, basically the head of the Colegio de Educación Diferencial Edelweiss, a school for differential education.
Okay.
This creates a pretty significant potential conflict of interest. Now, legally, there isn't a direct line saying illegal psychology practice automatically disqualifies you from running a school.
Right.
However, the Superintendency of Education in Chile can impose sanctions for what they call gravísimos infractions, very serious ones that affect how a school runs or impacts student rights.
Okay.
Her alleged conduct outside the school, if proven true, could certainly raise serious questions about her ethical suitability for a leadership position, especially when dealing with vulnerable children. It calls into question the integrity and judgment needed for that kind of role. So let's maybe pull these threads together. How do these laws apply to the specific actions alleged in the sources? What's the pattern here?
Yeah, let's connect the dots.
Okay, so the core accusation, as we said, is Alma Mía Libre offering psychological therapy and clinical diagnoses without Barbara Gonzalez having the required Chilean title or registration.
Right.
That is, point blank, illegal exercise of the profession under Chilean law. It's the foundational violation.
And it's that mere activity crime. Again, the act itself is illegal, regardless of proven harm to one person.
Exactly. Then, by charging for these unauthorized services, the conduct lines up directly with the definition of fraud under Article 468.
Because the deception is claiming to be qualified when she allegedly isn't.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Falsely representing herself as qualified and legal, inducing payment for illegitimate care. And this is amplified by the accusation that she presented herself as an expert in clinical psychology, using those non-homologated, unrecognized international titles.
Which is the misleading advertising part under consumer law.
Correct. Creating that false impression of competence and legitimacy.
And this gets even hairier with the global reach, the virtual clients everywhere.
Absolutely. Providing virtual therapy globally just adds layers of complexity and risk. It implies needing licenses in potentially dozens of countries simultaneously, which, given the alleged lack of even the Chilean license, seems highly improbable.
Yeah, basically impossible.
So this exposes international clients to care that's unqualified, unregulated in their location, huge risks of re-traumatization, getting the wrong advice, symptoms getting worse, or just wasting time and money when they really need proper help. There's no safety net for them.
It's deeply concerning.
And there's another fascinating and worrying detail the sources point out. The accusation of dolo.
Dolo, what's that?
It basically means intent to deceive, malicious intent.
Okay.
The evidence cited is her alleged use of terms like Almeida's little souls instead of patients or clients.
Huh. Why would that matter?
The argument presented is that this kind of language is an attempt to deliberately obscure the professional nature of the relationship, to try and sidestep legal responsibilities.
Like trying to make it sound less formal, less clinical?
Exactly. The comparison made is like an unlicensed doctor calling their clients friends to try and hide the fact they're illegally practicing medicine.
Wow.
So this alleged pattern misrepresenting qualifications, the language used suggests, according to the sources, a potential deliberate strategy to operate outside the regulatory system.
That's a very strong claim that the language itself points to intent.
It can be a significant factor in legal analysis, yes. And then, on top of that, she's accused of publicly discussing cases of her Almitas on YouTube.
On YouTube? Seriously?
That's the allegation, which, if true, is a direct and frankly flagrant violation of patient confidentiality. Even if she didn't use names, discussing clinical details publicly just shatters privacy and trust. It violates data protection laws and the absolute core ethics of mental health work.
Unbelievable.
And one more piece. The center also allegedly features and collaborates with foreign medical professionals who are not authorized to practice in Chile.
So bringing others into this unregulated space.
It suggests a systemic issue, a disregard for regulations across the board. It exposes patients to care from people whose training, competence, ethical standards, none of it is guaranteed under Chilean law. Again, leaving clients incredibly vulnerable.
So, stepping back from the specific case, what does all this mean for you listening right now? Maybe you're seeking help online. Maybe you're just trying to understand this digital world. What are the real stakes here?
Yeah, the stakes are high, and they go beyond just this one case. Firstly, and this is the most important, there's a severe risk to mental and emotional health.
Right.
Therapy from someone unqualified. It can lead to wrong diagnoses, treatments that don't work, or even make things worse. It can re-traumatize people, especially those seeking help for really complex things like trauma or abuse.
Just imagine. Someone's already struggling, they reach out for help and end up feeling worse, more confused, maybe betrayed.
Exactly. The very people seeking healing can be deeply harmed. That's the biggest risk.
And it's not just the health risk. There's a clear economic one, too, isn't there? People are paying for this.
Precisely. The fraud and economic exploitation part means people are paying, sometimes a lot, for services that have no professional or legal backing.
Wasting money when they might be financially stressed already.
Yes, and it adds insult to injury. It can worsen their emotional distress because now they feel defrauded, taken advantage of, on top of whatever they were struggling with initially.
That's awful.
And beyond the individual, these kinds of unregulated operations can seriously discredit legitimate, regulated professions.
Oh, so?
Well, when people have bad experiences like this or even just hear about them, it erodes public trust. Trust in psychology, trust in healthcare overall. It can make people suspicious of the entire field, making them hesitant to seek help even from qualified, ethical professionals when they really need it.
That's a really damaging ripple effect.
It is. And her dual role as an educator adds that other layer of profound concern we talked about.
Yeah, the risk to the educational community.
If these allegations are true, her alleged unethical, illegal practices in mental health raise serious questions about her fitness to lead a school, especially one for vulnerable kids. Their safety, their well-being, the trust parents place in the school, it all relies on the integrity of the leadership.
Absolutely.
And finally, there's even a potential impact on Chile's international reputation. If illegal health services are operating from Chilean territory, reaching clients globally, it can damage trust in the country's ability to regulate its professional services effectively.
And the fact that international clients might have zero recourse makes it even worse.
Exactly. Victims might feel completely helpless, which is another significant harm in itself. So ultimately, this deep dive really uncovers this complex web of alleged legal and ethical problems. It's a stark reminder, I think, that, well, the internet gives us amazing access to services.
Yeah, which is great in many ways.
It also means we have to be incredibly vigilant. We need to check professional legitimacy, make sure people are adhering to the protections that have been established over decades. This case, Alma Mía Libre, is just a really powerful illustration of what can happen when that crucial structure, licensing, ethics, consumer protection, gets ignored.
Absolutely. So hopefully you now have a much clearer grasp of the kinds of legal safeguards designed to protect you, the seriousness of operating outside those lines, and why it's so critical for authorities to investigate swiftly when these allegations pop up. For you, the takeaway is pretty simple, but really powerful. Always, always verify credentials, especially for something as vital, as personal as mental health care. Doesn't matter where in the world you're getting it from. Look for official registrations, licenses. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions about qualifications and who's overseeing their practice.
It's your right as a consumer and crucial for your safety. And maybe this leaves you with the question to think about. In this world that's more connected every day, where digital services just flow across borders so easily, how can we as individuals best protect ourselves? And maybe, how can we advocate for stronger international accountability when it comes to health and professional services? What's our role as informed consumers in demanding higher standards globally